Notoriously progressive and pompous Don Lemon, firebrand provocateur Tucker Carlson, and libertarian/intellectual conservative Ben Shapiro. It's not really a group that goes together, except all three larger-than-life male media personalities can't seem to learn that telling women, any woman, how to live their lives or when they're in their prime is a losing proposition. Here's Tucker and Ben talking about comedian Chelsea Handler. The 47-year-old recently posted a video celebrating her life without children.
And the point is to make you feel good about being an aging, deeply unlikable woman who never had kids. It's cool to be childless. Go barren.
Soon you're Chelsea Handler. Soon it's Valentine's Day, and your womb resembles a dried-up tumbleweed blowing down an old western town, and your Valentine's Day date for the 10th year in a row is a 10-year-old copy of Magic Mike and a half-full bottle of Xanax, and you're trying to pretend like you're happy, but you're not happy.
This lady is miserable. I mean, she is miserable, and it's written all over her face how miserable she is because she doesn't have kids.
What gentleman? Topped only by CNN's Don Lemon, commenting on Nikki Haley's run for president.
I think it's the wrong road to go down. She says people, politicians or something are not in their prime. Nikki Haley isn't in her prime. Sorry. When a woman is considered to be in her prime in her 20s and 30s and maybe 40s.
He will now undergo, quote, formal training, whatever that means, at CNN to keep his job. Beverly Hallberg's here, founder and president of District Media Group. Beverly, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
I want to ask all three of these men, which is one question. What would your mother think?
Yeah, when we come to just being decent with each other, I think we could look at some of these clips and say that these were inappropriate comments. What I will say about Chelsea Handler is this was a comedic skit that she put on Instagram, she put on social media. I think in many ways, if she is saying things that are pretty outlandish, some of the things she said, there is fair game to mock her. But I would say to any man, especially conservative men, it is not a good look to criticize someone by saying that their womb is dried up. I think it is fair game to talk about if a woman chooses not to have children, is that going to lead to happiness or not? I think that women make that choice for themselves. But there is another reason for them to be really, really careful, and that is there are many women who can't have kids, who find these types of comments completely distasteful. And also new studies are pointing to that women in Generation Z, about a third of them won't get married. And I think fertility is going to be an issue for a lot of women coming down the pike. So talking about this in a callous way, making personal attacks against somebody isn't the right tactic. Talk about the policy. Let's talk about the issue behind it.
If I said any three of those things, my mother would drag me out by my ear, and rightfully so. I think about it, though, from the conservative standpoint. Conservatives were dancing on what they thought was Don Lemon's television career that's been slightly resurrected now with his formal training. If conservatives want to be this moral arbiter of what can be said and what can be not said, it feels pretty hollow when they make those kinds of comments about a woman's choice to have kids or not have kids.
Well, I first of all think, again, this went to personal attacks. This talked about a woman's womb being desolate and barren, and I think that just went too far. But I think talking about comedians who poke fun at conservatives and Republicans, there is fair game for pushing against that. Don Lemon, with his comments, he offended women regardless of political party. He is talking about somebody who is running for president, not somebody who is a comedian who makes a lot of distasteful jokes.
If you want to apply that,
a difference.
Well, yeah, but if you want to apply that standard either way, okay, at some point when you walk out onto the field, running for president is the NFL. It changes the dynamic. If a comedian can be mocked, a presidential candidate can be mocked, nobody should be held up to ridicule in that way. And certainly about an issue of age or sex or whether you have kids or not. Those are different things. I think what I'm wondering is, how did we get to the spot that this is considered effectively fair game?
Well, I think we've had a problem for a long time, and I will put Donald Trump in this camp where there were personal attacks, even in his presidency, making fun of different politicians who are liberal and having nicknames for them. I wish we could go back to an era where people would have a level of decorum in how we talk about issues. Both sides are doing this, and part of this is due to polarization. It's a lot harder to be kind when you disagree, but sadly, we do see people going to these low-level base discussions Wisconsin-based debates that are more about personality, more about looks, and not actually about policy. And I will say this, Republican women face this a lot. Their looks are critiqued a lot. Yeah. This happens quite often, especially female politicians. So Don Lemon's comments, obviously offensive, but frankly, the only thing surprising about it was that he actually said it out loud, that his feelings came out on air.
Yeah, and also a little surprising that he got in trouble for it, too. I think that, and I certainly surprised Don Lemon as well. I want to put this up. You said it's hard to be kind. It's also hard to be funny, which Nikki Haley pulled off. Claim your koozie. Past my prime, hold my beer. She's now fundraising off of it. So there is humor in politics. Beverly,
it's been great for her.
You were the perfect guest for this. It's good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you so much.
Dueling speech.